I have a sculpt sent in by Dani asking for some critique. And Dani says, just wanted to say that the video you made about hair helped me a lot, and I have progressed on the sculpt quite a bit. Now that I am in a mid to late sculpt progress, I wanted to share with you the whole file so that you can make a general critique video if you want to, of course. Well, we're here, so. I love hearing from the pros which things I'm doing wrong and what I need to correct. So feel free to make what you want with this. Thanks for the help. And the reference is from Sasha Tudvaseva. And I will include her stuff down below in the description as well. Cool. So, Dani boy, let's take a look. Or Dani girl, I guess. Either or. It doesn't really matter. Dani, let's see what you got going on here. I think you have the general feeling of some of these sharp edges and form transitions headed in the right direction. But what we're lacking mostly here is just in terms of accuracy. So let's take a look at some of the areas where you are lacking in accuracy. The first kind of obvious thing that really stood out to me is obviously you have these hard plane changes going on in the face, which is great, right? We see a lot of that going on here. But at the same time, we don't really have the exact same forms, internal silhouette shapes, and plane changes that we see going on here in your sculpt. I think it's very obvious if we just kind of go solo mode here on the face, and if I were to follow this line up your brow, and it just kind of wraps around here, that's the kind of first hit coming down, other than this kind of curve. But if we look at the concept, it goes all the way up and right up here. Look how much of a distance we have in difference there between the eye and the brow that's not present in your sculpt, and then we wrap around down to that corner of the eye. So there's a huge kind of difference there in terms of what we want to see. So that's the kind of stuff that I would pay attention to kind of take this to the next level. So you definitely want to work on that area for sure. That's just kind of a quick change there to show you the direction that you want to push this. But I'm not going to take the time to get that to match that curve perfectly 100%. Another area where I see this happening, you have this kind of zygomatic crease going on back here, which just simply isn't present in the character. So pay attention to your reference, I guess, is in general what we're looking for here. So that kind of creases and wraps down around that way. That's totally fine, but we just want to soften that transition a little bit. And it actually looks like, if we look at where this hit takes place, if we follow this line from the eyebrow to the edge of the face, and it comes straight down, it's a straight line, and it hits about right underneath that ear, where the earlobe, the giant earlobe, starts right about there. So this line, we actually want to shift down quite a bit. And you have it representing this zygomatic, which is fine, but it's not what we're seeing in our reference. So if we're going for accuracy here, this line is quite a bit further down, like I said, more in line with the earlobe there. So just kind of changing that in three-dimensional space, as well as making the side of the face a bit more flat there. We start to get more into the correct zone that we want here. There's also some differences that I'm just noticing as we kind of roll back here. It's a little hard to tell just from this one image, but I'm just going to flatten some of this area here. I think that'll help make that feel a bit better from the front view. Your cheekbone, or whatever this surface turn is supposed to be, which I'm going to claim is the cheekbone. Your cheekbone will oftentimes cover up your tragus if you're looking at a head directly on, and it's going to have some form of perspective that's not, super flat. It's pretty much always going to cover up that ear, like I said, that tragus, which is that little guy right there on the front. So just kind of pushing that in a little bit, I think, helps that to kind of line up a little bit better there with what I'm seeing in the reference. So just trying to get that a little bit closer, a little bit more accurate. If we look at the line coming down from the cheek to the chin, yours has this curve in towards the lips, right? But what I'm seeing in the concept is quite a bit more straight, so that's another area that I would take a look at. as well as your eyes having this really strong kind of hit right here and dipping in. It's another area where we want to try to just get that a little bit closer to what we're seeing in our reference. So you got the right feeling going on with all these hard form transitions, but the actual accuracy just isn't quite there yet. So I think a little bit more work in these directions will really help you out. Like, for instance, if you look at your lips, it's more of a kind of squared off bottom lip with these 2 points right here being more of the lowest point hitting, but whereas yours is more of just kind of a singular triangular shape. So kind of squaring that off, making sure that the top lip kind of has the same basic idea. It's kind of some squared lips going on, which creates a pretty neat style. Right here, I mean, this just kind of goes straight across based on what I can see, so not much of a Cupid's bow effect going on, more of just kind of a trapezoid of some kind. Do the same thing kind of down here, square that off a bit more, as well as this for the pillows of the lips, just trying to get that a little bit closer to what I'm seeing there. And then just kind of getting rid of some of the excess volume here that just isn't visible in the concept either. So I know a lot of this stuff is really messy as I'm trying to do it really quick to point it out as much as I can, but I think you kind of get the idea of what we're aiming for here in the face in terms of just pushing a little bit closer towards accuracy. So I think that's all I'll say on that. In terms of some stuff like here on the clothing, I think you can have a lot easier time working on something like this if you actually poly model, or at least get this a lot lower poly to kind of fit this silhouette. And I'll show you what I mean here with a very quick demonstration. So let me turn off your clothing. Ooh, risque, I know. And I will initialize it into a quick cylinder down here. Let me grab that cylinder, move it down, and I'm just gonna fast forward as I scale and move this into place really quick. Okay, so I have very quickly just scaled and moved this cylinder around. I've just used masking and pretty much a move brush and the transpose line. That's all. What I will do though to this is do a quick little crease from the crease menu at the default settings, which will crease the top and bottom end caps, as well as a couple others here. If you're getting this issue, I'll use my Z modeler brush to crease and edge, hold the Alt key, and I can just uncrease those very quick. So we'll get rid of those extra creases that we do not want. So I recommend using polygon primitives for whatever you possibly can to represent a form. This is such a simple shape, it can be easily represented with a cylinder like I've done here. And it looks like maybe that crease is kind of only on the one side. I'm not sure, that doesn't really make too much sense to me. But what I'm going to do is use the Z modeler brush, hover over an edge, hold the space bar, and just run a bevel operation. And then I can just kind of add a small little bevel in there. So now when I crease, or I'm sorry, not crease, but when I subdivide this, it will retain that edge a lot tighter around that area. You can also hollow this geometry out very easily with just a couple clicks. One of the ways that I like to do this the most though is by deleting caps of geometry. So I've deleted the top and bottom portion of that. And what we can do is use the Z modeler brush again to extrude all polygons and extrude a small amount of thickness there, so that when we smooth that out, it'll feel a little bit more fabric-y. So kind of the idea here that we want to go for is something a little bit more, what would you say, a little bit more simple. Try to think of what polygon primitives can represent the forms that you're trying to create as best as you can, and try to represent your clothing in a more physical nature. So I would like to unweld these vertices and kind of get that to overlap a little bit, so let me do that very quickly here. To kind of separate these really fast, what I'll do is I'm going to run a bevel operation on this edge loop and do another one really quick. Just something fast here so that I can split and separate these in a fairly quick and uncomplicated way. So we'll do that. Now these are kind of separated, and I can use masking to my advantage to mask off and move and overlap this geometry to make it feel more similar to what I'm seeing in the reference image. So after doing that for just a moment with our move brush, then once we kind of get the shape that we want, then we can take the time to add in some quick thickness there, which is again just using the Z modeler brush with extrude all polygons. And you may hear the wind outside. Apparently I just got a tornado warning. So we'll finish up this critique and then take shelter as my phone advises. So for this, once I smooth this, it's kind of getting rounded and not looking super great. So we can again use the Z modeler brush for that by creasing some edges in some particular areas, crease edge loop, all that good stuff. There's a lot of different options here for creasing. I enjoy using mainly the edge loop function, but for kind of these corners where it stays a little bit more tight in those areas, you can just do the normal crease non-edge loop version. And here you see we're already starting to get a lot closer than the original cloth that we had here. And kind of trying to do this way, it's just a little frustrating. I've been there, so I know what that's like. I wouldn't really recommend doing this unless you can kind of represent it very quickly, or a lot more quickly than you could with something that is a primitive. So after you get this to a point where you really like it, you can start subdividing it. Of course, I just noticed, and I don't know if you have this on for anything else, but you had the smooth modifier off for some of your geometry. I'm not going to go through everything to check to see if you have it on, but if you turn this off, it essentially keeps your geometry from smoothing as you subdivide it. So make sure you have that on for most things. So very quickly, just kind of smooth that out with a few subdivision levels, and then of course you can come through there and continue to sculpt on that and work the form a bit more. All right, last thing I'll say is on your hair. Your hair is just kind of lacking the same accuracies that I mentioned for our face. So I would just say pay attention to your silhouette here a little bit more closely. I think you have the larger shape pretty close. I think in terms of where exactly this is kind of coming forward, this could probably use some work from the profile view, I think, for sure. But then these additional strands, I would just say make sure you're keeping the shape a little bit more close to what we're seeing in our reference. And other than that, I think that's all I'll say on this. I think you have a good start here, a good direction, just need some more accurate form changes in the face. Think about using primitives wherever you can for stuff like clothing. You know, for these gauges, you could just use simple cylinders, and for the earlobe, you can even, extrude more geometry from that to wrap around that. I think that would be really easy. For the hair, same thing as the face, just kind of pay attention to where these form and plane changes are happening, and I think that will get you headed in a good direction. All right, good luck, Dani, and I look forward to seeing what you end up doing with it.